Boker Tov. Today's daf is daf Pei Gimel in Nidrim. Yesterday on Pei Beis and Beis, we started with an Indian a question of this: if she made a neder from saying that she's not going to have enough from two different loaves of bread, one involving inui because it's a good bread, and one is a coarse bread, not a good bread, and that doesn't involve inui nefesh. Can he? Well, how does it work? Can he only break the one that involves inui, or do you say that since he breaks one, he breaks the whole thing? So, mitoch shehuter, this is the machlokas here between Rav Yehuda Shmuel and Rav Asi and Rav Yochanan. Shmuel says that you can only break made from the masana. He can't break the one that doesn't involve inui nefesh, because again, we've learned that a husband can only can cancel the neder of inui nefesh, or also beino lebeino, but this isn't beino lebeino. So he can only break the ones that involves inui, which is the good bread, not the bad one. Rabbi Yochanan says no. I'm sorry, the other way around. Shmuel says that mitoch shumei for the masana, my for he breaks both of them. It all goes together. And we explain in the Ran explains that since it says isha yifei renu, you break the whole thing. In other words, if he makes one neder, you break the whole thing. If you break part, you break the whole thing. So you can't break part. Rav Asi Yochanan says no, you can only break the part that involves inui. You can't involve. Rav Asi Yochanan says you can't break one that doesn't involve inui. How does he understand yifei renu, break the whole thing? Break everything that you're capable of breaking up. The Torah gave him the ability that nobody else has. Nobody else has the ability to, even a rabbi can't break it with no reason. You say for no cause at all. He can only break it when he's mater neder, because it turns out the whole thing was a mistake, right? He may find an excuse. Had you known this, you wouldn't have made it. So the whole thing was a mistake. So it's okalam afreya. But a baal, and it's machlokas about that. We'll see that in Nazir about whether a baal's megas guys, does he break it only going forward or even backwards? We hold baal's megas guys only going forward. But going forward, he breaks the neder without cause. And that ability that he has is without cause, it only involves a darm that doesn't have inui nefesh or beina lebeina. So over here, when she makes a neder involving two loaves of bread, one good and one bad, the bad one doesn't involve inui nefesh. She doesn't want that anyway. But she makes a neder, she's not going to have enough in that. Rav Asi's, the name of Yochanan says no. She can only break the one that involves inui nefesh, not the one. He can only break the one that involves inui nefesh, not the other one, because that's all the Torah gave him the ability. Yes, he's breaking the entire neder, but only as far as what he's able to do. So he's breaking all that he can break. All that he can break is the inui nefesh one, not that one. So here's the shaila. This is a clear machlokas between Shmuel and Rav Yochanan. She makes an neder. She's not going to have two breads or osher, one good, one bad. One involves inui nefesh, one doesn't. Shmuel says because you can break one, the inui nefesh should break the other one. Rav Yochanan says you cannot. So the Gemara then asks the kasha. The Gemara at the end of the daf, let's say she made a nazir, she became a nazira, which means she can't drink wine and go to funerals, and she disobeyed that. She drank the wine, she went to funerals, she gets malchus. However, if the husband broke it without even knowing about it, as we said, it says Hashem Yisachla, so she's not punished. Husband broke the neder and she didn't know about it, and she was drinking wine and going to funerals, she doesn't get malchus for that. The Gemara said, what do you mean? If you hold like Rabbi Yochanan, who says what you can only break the inui nefesh, not the other one. Well, when she can't drink wine she can't drink, but she can eat grape seeds, the kernels and the skins of the grapes. That doesn't involve inui nefesh. That's not inui nefesh. So the chor that he can't break. He can only break what involves inui nefesh. Inui nefesh is not drinking wine, but about eating the grape skins, that's not necessarily inui nefesh. So the Gemara said, if you say that according to Rabbi Yochanan, he can only break what involves inui nefesh, what involves self-affliction, and doesn't make the other ones. So maybe, the Gemara said Dilma, but the Gemara, we explained, the Ran says, well, dafka Dilma, but it's definitely that way, that if you can only break what involves inui nefesh, not drinking wine is inui nefesh, not being able to drink wine. They didn't have Diet Coke and all the other drinks that we have today, beer, all that, right? They had beer, but they didn't have Diet Coke. They didn't have our beer. But anyway, the point is that yayin is inui nefesh, right? That's our, but the grape skins and the grape kernels, that's not inui nefesh. So he didn't break that. So she should still get malchus. Understand? Because if she was a nazira and he broke the net, he broke what he could. He could only break inui nefesh. According to Bechman, you only break what involves inui nefesh. You can't break the one that doesn't involve inui nefesh. So the skins and the kernels doesn't involve inui nefesh, and we'll see going to the funerals also. But here we're dealing with the skins and the kernels. That's not a nefesh. So the Nazir should still stand for that. So if that's the case, she should get malchus for that. If she was over, and she's still a Nazir as far as that's concerned. So Rabbi Yosef, the Gemara says on Rabbi Yosef, ain't Nazir Sachatzon. Halfway down the page on Pei Gimel and Aleph, Rabbi Yosef said there's no Nazirs for half. You can't be half a Nazir. You're either a Nazir or you're not. So if he breaks the Naziris for the wine, it's broken for the whole thing. So Amalei Abai said, "How carbon lachatzi Naziris ika." It's mashma that what? That this is 10th line on Gimel on Pei Gimel and Aleph. It's mashma that she could bring a carbon for a chatzi Naziris. In other words, there's no Naziris as far as observing it with the drinking of the wine and the grapes and all that. But as far as carbon, you could bring a carbon for Chatzi Naziris. Since you say Nazir Chatzon, says the Ran on the left side, and you didn't say Ein Chatzon bin Naziris. He says Ein Nazir Chatzon, but Ein Chatzon, there's no such thing as halves. You can't do partial Naziris, Mashma Naziris, Atzma, who to like a Chatzon. Hayesh carbon Chatziris could go. For example, let's say she was a Nazira and she counted 15 days, half of the Naziris. The Stam Naziris is 30 days, and then he broke it. So he's mevatel the other days going forward, but the first days mashma that are not ne'ekar, as we hold the kaimul on the perak misha amar already nasir the baal make his guys. We paskin like that over there, as I said, because the machlokas where the husband uproots it lamafreya or going forward. We paskin you guys are metama baya. How can you, if there's no such, if he breaks it, so he breaks it going forward, right? So she had 15 days on the Naziris, and the last 15 days she didn't observe. But you would bring a carbon. Abai says, "Wait, how can you bring a carbon on a half of accounting on a half of Naziris? You bring carbonos after you did full Naziris, but not after half." So Abai said, "How come Naziris Ika?" Elam Rabbi back in the Gemara, no. Ein Naziris Chatzon, Ein Carbon Chatzon. He could have just said Ein Chatzon and Naziris. That would have been easier, right? And Chatzon would have been obvious, but he means say no. When he means Ein Naziris Chatzon, you can't be half a Nazir. So if you can't drink, if your Naziris is over as far as wine, then the Naziris is over as far as the grapes also. It doesn't make any difference. So even though there is no, you could argue that there's no inu nefesh on the grapes. That's not not eating the grape skins. It's not inu nefesh. But once the Naziris is gone, it's gone. Ain't Naziris chatzon. There ain't carbon lechatzon, and there's no carbon also brought on a half a Naziris. So that answers that kasha. The first kasha we passed on Rabbi Yochanan. But now the Gemara is going to bring out a case where we see that you could bring carbonos. There are such thing as partial carbonos, meaning that you bring some of the carbonos, not all of them. He says it's mashma. The kasha was, since it's mashma, the yesh carbon l'chatzos, going to another month since she 15 days, would you bring some of the carbonos? Can that really be? Meisvei. Now we're asking kasha on that. When you say we're asking a kasha, an interim kasha on ein carbon l'chatzon. Meisvei. This is where we left off yesterday, halfway down on the page in the Gemara. Later become a Nazarite. The Ran explains what it means is she became tamei. She became tamei, and if you become tamei, what's the deal? You've got to bring other karbanos. You bring not when you're tamei, you bring an asham, which is a male, a ram, and you bring olas oaf and olas chatus, 2 birds. That's what if you became tamei while you're a nazir. And then you have to finish stop being tamei, bring these 3 karbanos, and then start the Naziris over again. You got to start 30 days over again. So it says over there, meaning she was mafresh her carbon asham, her animal. Then the husband broke the netter. She doesn't bring the also. Remember, if she became tamei, as we'll see, if she finishes her Nazira, she brings a chatas, ola, and shlama, 3 regular karbanos, 3 animals. But if she became tamei in the middle, she has to bring an asham, which you don't bring if you finish the Naziris regularly, cleanly. She brings an asham, and she brings 2 birds, a chatas and an ola bird. So it says, let's say she became tamei and she was a mafresh animal, and then her husband broke it. She brings the chatas up, and she doesn't bring the ola sa'ov. Why? If you say, like Abai just said, that there's no carbon for a half a Naziris, you didn't fulfill the whole Naziris, you don't bring any carbonos at all. Why do you bring a chatasov? Why would you bring a chatasov? There's no carbon for chatas. So the Gemara says, well, wait a minute. The elamai yesh carbon chatas. So what's your argument the other way? The fact you bring chatasov shows that there is a carbon for chatas. So then shalosh peimas poi lasuye. She should bring. That means she should bring all the carbonos once she's finished. In other words, If you have to bring the chatzos, yesh karbanos chatzos is meaning she became tummy, she should bring the karbanos. And then what? Bring the karbanos, and then when it's all over and she finishes the naziris, she should bring regular karbanos. Let's say she has to bring 3 karbanos, achatos olin shlomim, which is what you would bring if she didn't become tummy. In other words, he's saying it's a little bit strange because if he broke her naziris, he broke the naziris, right? He was made for the neder, made for her naziris. So then we're okay. She brings the chatasof, not the olasof, not the other karbanos. So what does that show you? That yesh karban chatzir. So if that's the case, in a regular case, if he broke the naziris in the middle, that's what it means. You bring chatas olin shlom. Chatas olin shlom is when you finish a regular karbanos, not when you're tamei. So the Ran says there's 2 ways to learn here. The Ran says, take a look at the Ran about 10 lines from the bottom of the page in the Ran on the left side. Had she not become tummy and he broke it in the middle, because chatzos ol shlom is not what you bring when you're tummy. We're talking about when she became tummy in the middle. Inami, or you could say, I feel nitness, boil the keeping the balo elamegas guy, since he cuts it off, so you should say, look, she has to, he only cuts it off going forward. So if she became tamei, so he brings whatever karbanos she brings for being tamei, and then she brings the regular ones. It's finished. If you say yesh karbanos, if you say there's karbanos even for a chatzi naziris, right? Yesh karbanos lachatzi naziris. That's what we're saying. Or yesh karbanos lachatzoin. So she finishes whatever she's supposed to bring when she's tamei. After 15 days, she became the husband broke it. And she became tamei, so finish what do you have to bring then, and then bring the other ones. The tara after she becomes purified and brings the karbanos of tumah, then she should bring the other ones. If you say yes, we know that's not the case. You only do it when you finish the full 30 days. You have to start all over again. But if you say this idea that there is karbanos for chatzei naziris, then that would be the logical conclusion. That you bring the karbanos that you have to bring as a tamei nazir, as a nazir tamei, and then you bring the other ones. So that's what he means by an elamai yesh karban chatzir shalosh b'amis lazavi lasui chatas ol shlom, which are the regular karbanos of Tara. Ella, so that and that's not clearly not the case. Ella laolamein karban chatzir. Like Abai said, you don't bring a karban chatzir naziris, and you could also ask if you bring the chatasof, why don't you bring the olasof and the asham? The chatasof, the muslim shum the chatasof suffix. Chatasof is a special category when it comes to sveikas. He says, right? The chatasof maybe shum the chatasol suffix. A chatasof is brought regular. Let's see, a regular carbon, an animal. If you're not sure if you have to bring it, you don't bring it. Why? Because it might be chulin lazara, right? So you don't bring it. There is no issue of chulin lazara. Let's say on a bird. So a chatasof is a special halacha that on a bird you bring it even the suffix. So you bring the chatas oaf and it's not eaten. Why? Why is it not eaten? It's not eaten because if you're not really chayav a carbon, so what is it? It's chulin. And if you did malika on chulin, malika's chulin is an avela. Can't eat it, right? You can't eat it, right? So you bring it anyway. So why chatas oaf? What about the ola? So the Gemara over there discusses in Nazirs. Maybe it goes like Rav Shapiro who says that anybody who's a Nazir is a sinner, so you should bring it anyway. But the Ola you don't bring because he cut off the Nazir, so he's not really finishing, not really chayiv to bring it. You bring it anyway. Once you're mafresh, you bring it anyway because she's a stickle sinner anyway. And you bring it all a suffix, since you bring all a suffix. What do you mean you bring it all a suffix? Let's say a woman gave birth and it's not clear if it was a baby or not. It might have just been some sack with water, it wasn't real baby, so you're not sure. What do? She has to, if she gave birth, she has to bring the regular karbanos of a yoledes, a chatas and an ola bird. And here she does. And so what do you do in that case? It's a suffix. A chatasof is a special chatasof is ball a suffix, and you don't eat it, right? You don't eat it because it might be in avela. But so that's why he says chatasof is a special achad. Really, the truth is ain't nazir chatzayin. There's no such thing as a half a naziris, and if he broke her naziris is a netter, the husband has a right to break on the day that he heard about it. When the husband heard about it, if he broke it, that's it, the naziris is gone. What about the 10 or the 15 days that she kept? So she kept it, that's all. And if she was tummy in middle, doesn't make any difference. yes, we say that she brings the chatasof anyway. If she was mafresh that, she brings the chatasof anyway because chatasof is all a suffix. But she's really not a Naziris at all, and she didn't finish the Naziris. So therefore, it's like Hashem Yisachar. The truth is that at the time that she sinned, she did sin. The husband only breaks it going forward, right? Right? Basically going forward, right? So because of in other words, what's mashma from here is that if she was tamei on purpose, or she drank wine on purpose before the husband broke it, before that she get malchus, because she sinned at the time. He sinned. The husband only breaks it halacha going forward. So let's say she became a Nazira on January 1st, and he heard about it, and on January 5th she went to the funeral and she drank wine. She didn't care. January 10th he broke the neder. He broke the neder. He said she's not a Nazir anymore. That's when he heard about it. What's she drinking all this wine? What's going on over here? Oh, she became a Nazir. So then once it's also she wanted to drink it, right? So she drank. He heard about it then, and he broke it. She's still a Charachayev Malchus for it. When did he say Hashem Yislach La? If he broke it before she transgressed the Yisr, and she didn't know that she broke it, even though she did it the Kavanah, she says, I don't care, I'm going to drink anyway. Her husband already broke it. Hashem forgives her anyway, even though she meant to be a bad girl, but she wasn't. At the end of the day, she wasn't. Okay. So that's where we are here now. So we just asked this question about Ein Korban L'Chatzon. We said the truth is Ein Korban L'Chatzon. That the Chatasof is a special case. Eisvei, 4 lines from the bottom of the page in the Gemara. This is really the same case that we just had, but now we're asking a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan. We ask kasha on Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan say that we started off with that. He can only break the neder as far as the inu nefesh loaf, the good loaf, but he can only break inu nefesh. He can't break the one that's not inu nefesh. So if she forswore from eating 2 loaves of bread, a good one and a bad one, the one that involves inu nefesh she could break. The one that doesn't involve she can't break. It's really the same case, but here it's brought down the way it's brought down in Nazir. She became a Nazir, and she became Tamei. And then the husband broke it afterwards. She brings a chatasov and mevia olasov. Now, let's assume now that she became Tamei by mistake. The nitba she became Tamei. It doesn't say she went on purpose. She became Tamei. So we're not talking about a case of Malchus. The first case that we asked at the end of yesterday's daf, there she was on purpose. She was over on it before the husband broke it. She get malchus for that. The husband broke it, and afterwards she sinned. Then it's not a sin because there wasn't any zeros. But here she became tamei. So what did he say? Okay, this is the same. This is the same thing we quoted before, except the case before. I think it's really the same Gemara, but here he says in the middle of the page that we started with today, Meisvei says, so the Ran says, why was she mafresh an animal? If she was not a benazir, why was she mafresh an animal then? And the Ran said that the first wide lines, not the widest lines, the first of the wide lines on the Ran on the left side, they keep the Tani Mavia Chatas Oaf, Mamela Mashra, she became Tamei. But that's how he quotes it. But the real Gemara, if you'll see the Gemara Nazir, it's like he quotes here 4 lines from the bottom page of the Gemara. Isha Shanada ben Nazir ben Nitmis, and she became Tamei, which is the same thing. After she became Tamei, and then the husband broke it. So she brings Chatas Oaf, as we said before, because Chatas Oaf is Baal Suffolk, and according to Blazer Kapper, she's a sinner in some way because you shouldn't be a Nazir. Hashem gave us the wine and the grapes to enjoy, not to prohibit ourselves from. Then the veal she doesn't bring it also. But here now we ask Kash on Rabbi Yochanan, not on Abaye. Before the Kash was on Abaye. Abaye said Ein Korban L'Chatzon, Smash Yesh Korban L'Chatzon. So we answered that. Now we ask Kash on Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said that you can only break what involves in a nefesh, not the other part. Made from the son, then made from the shen. If you go like Rabbi Yochanan, who said that when a husband breaks the neder, he can only break the part of the neder that involves inui nefesh, not the part that doesn't involve inui nefesh, right? Right? That's what he said. You can only break the part that involves the good loaf, not the bad loaf. You can't break that part. That's what he said. Wait a minute, but dilma miyayin de islatzar. So wine, when he breaks the neder, that's inui nefesh. Yes, far from that. Hefela, he broke that. Again, dilma is not really dilma. He means really. You can only break the part, according to Bechnon, part that involves inui nefesh. Dilma miyayin de islatzar hefela. Mitumas meisa islatzar lofela. Is it inui nefesh if you can't go to a funeral? A lot of people don't like to go to funerals, right? You don't want to go to funerals, right? So why is it inui nefesh? In other words, when she becomes a nazir, she's not only prohibited from drinking wine and wine products, right? and cutting hair also from attending funerals. But attending funerals, not drinking wine is eating nefesh, right? Maybe not cutting your hair also, if it gets too long and dirty also could be eating nefesh. But not going to funerals, that's not that's not eating nefesh. So maybe he can't break it as far as that. So why do you say that he can only break the part if you say he can only break the part of nefesh, and he can't break the part that doesn't involve nefesh? Dilma miyayin, there's like yayin, there's sar. Hey for love, mitumas meslo is a sar, lo for love. So there, if that's the case, therefore he didn't break it, and therefore she's still a nazir as far as tuma goes. The Kivan Shekain says the Ran on the right side. Kivan Shekain lo mikri gabi tuma chatzi minyan shon zir sherechai v'sil hashim kol minyan zirusa. And what do you say? She only brings the chatos of just bring the olos up. What do you mean? She's still a nazira. As far as tumas mace goes, she's still a nazira. She's not as far as wine goes. But she's still as far as not going to funerals because that's not eating nefesh. Now you could say, yeah, but we just said before, ein nazirus lechatzon, right? We could give that answer. So we'll see the Ran in a minute. You could give that answer, but the Gemara gives a better answer first. The Amri Tumas Meis Nami is a tsar. If you can't go to a funeral, there's also a tsar for that. If you never attend a funeral, there's a tsar for that too. I guess ask a coin. Dechsiv v'hachayiten libo. What does the pasuk say? What does Shlomo Melech say in Koheles? Says Tov lo leches al beis evel. Better go to a house of mourning than going to a house of feast. Everybody eventually is going to die. And the person who is alive will take it to heart. What do we mean by take it to heart? When you go to a funeral, you take it to heart. How is that? The Tanya we learn how to Rav Meir Omer. What do we learn from that word? You take it to heart. The yispo yispurun, a person who eulogizes others, he will also be eulogized. The yifkan, if he cries for others, yifkan they'll cry for him. The yik or yikmura, the one who buries others, he will self be buried. In other words, when you're prevented from going to a funeral, you also have tsar. It's only because you say, if I don't go to a funeral, nobody's going to come to mine. If I don't eulogize others, nobody will come to mine. So there's obviously a nefesh there too. The Ran says the truth of the Gemara could have given the answer that we gave before. What do you mean? You can only break the wine. You can only break the nazirs as far as the wine, but not as far as not going to funerals. You could give that answer. The Ran says, yeah. We're at the right side, about 10 lines down, and he says over here, he gives the second answer that he gives is he could have given that answer but he wanted to give this answer. But he says another answer. He says another answer is that we can understand how wine and grapes, you can't separate those, right? If you can't drink wine, if you can break the net for the wine, you break it for the grapes too. But the tuma aspect of Naziris and the wine aspect are not interrelated, as we see the other way around by a Nazir Shimshon. We'll talk about Naziris. A Nazir Shimshon, right? What's his halacha? He says the Ashur Naziris below tuma. A Nazir Shimshon also can't drink wine, like Shimshon. But he could be Matam Lamesim. Another Shimshon, he could be Matam Lamesim, but he can't drink wine. So you see that the wine and the Tumas Mes is not interrelated. The Kiva Toli Tumah ben Naziris, Efshanami the other way around too. The Isa there's an Isra of Tumah without an Isra of Naziris. So you can't give this answer, Ein Naziris L'Chatzoin. What do you mean? There's Chatzoin as far as the wine goes, but the not going to a funeral, not attending a funeral, and drinking wine are not interrelated, as you see the other way by Shimshon, Inami, because she most importantly, she wanted to give a rest. You're right. Maybe you could say Ein Nazir Chatzon, but he wants to tell you the truth. The truth is that Tumas Mace does involve tsar, because if you can't go to a funeral, you'll be thinking that just like you're not attending their funeral and crying for them and burying them, nobody will attend yours either. All right. So anyway, we come out. That seems to be the halacha. We ask the Kashan Rabbi Yochanan, we give an answer that the halacha is that you can only break the part of the neder that involves eating nefesh, not the part that doesn't involve eating nefesh. Says the Mishnah. Let's say she says, I'm not going to have any pleasure from people. No pleasure from people. Now, the Ran says right away, according to Shmuel said before, we said the way Ran learns that Shmuel goes like the Chachamim, you could break that eating nefesh. According to Rabbanan, you could break such a neder. Right? You're not going to have any enough from people. You're not going to have any of their produce, anything that they have to give you. But we're going like Rav Yossi, like Rav Yossi. And Rav Yossi, she wasn't really going to make a nefesh, but Rav Yossi says, no, this is not always eating nefesh. Remember what the Chacham say is eating nefesh, like washing and adorning and even eating fruits Rabbi Yossi doesn't hold so much that's ini nefesh. You're also not going to have enough from brios. This is Rabbi Yossi. Ein yochel the Mishnah says he can't break that netter. Presumably, what? But she's not going to have enough from anybody. What about the husband? Is the husband part of the brios or not? That we'll see. It's mashma that you could have enough from the husband. But then it says she could have enough from like a shouldn't pay. We'll see in the Gemara, like it should pay. It says azov to azov an extra time, so that when it gives to truma, somebody, if I'm offers truma, I can give it to any Kohen that I want. That's worth something. That's tovas anah that I can give it to any Kohen I want, right? So maybe the grandfather who's a Yisrael will pay me a few bucks to give it to his grandson who's a Kohen, right? That's worth something. That truma. Same thing with Meiser, this tovas anah, but not when it comes to like it should pay. Like it should pay, you have to leave. All the people in the world, all the poor people are entitled to take it equally. So if her husband can't feed her, or if her husband's poor, so she could have enough shekel pay. So even though she prohibited herself from having enough from everybody, there's no inin nefesh there, according to Rav Yossi. It's not inin nefesh, and right, she could have enough from her husband. If not the husband, she could have enough from like a shekel pay. Period. Okay. Then the Mishnah goes off, and once you're talking about this kind of idea of having anah, when you prohibited yourself from having anah from other people, what about a regular person? Not this part of the Mishnah is not talking about a woman. A man says, I don't want any, I'm not going to give them any hana. They can't have any hana. She said, the case before was where she said, I'm not going to have any from them. He says, I don't want any hana that Kohen Levim would have is also as a carbon. They can't have enough of me. He says, he has to give Trumas and Maasros, right? So they have to take it. They can take it from him because they're entitled to take the Trumas and Maasros. True. He can choose which Kohen he wants, but if he says all Kohanim Levim can't have enough from me, so he can't do that. So the Kohanim Levim could take his Trumas and Maasros. Kohanim Elu, if he says these Kohanim are these Levim, I only want this particular Kohen and this particular Levi not to have enough from them. Then other people can take it. Then other people can take it. But in the first case, the netter's not even chal because he can't prohibit himself. They're entitled. It's like he's meshubet to give him this Trumas and Maasros. But if he said these Kohanim and these Levim are prohibited from having him off, he can give it to somebody else. You don't even have to have a Taras and Dam. You can give it to somebody else. But as far as the first part of the Mishnah goes, where she said, I'm not going to have from anybody else. So what do you say? He can't break that netter. Why can't he break the netter? Can't break the netter because she could have enough from him. Alma efshir de mizana b'dilates mashmi. She could have enough. She could be supplied and supported from his assets. Mechal de ba'ala b'chal b'riosu. When she said, I don't want any of enough from all human beings, mashmi, he's not included. Only human beings that are not related to her, right? Because ishtar kuguf, it's like other human beings, not herself. Her husband's like her. Mechal de ba'ala b'chal b'riosu. It's mashmi, the husband is not in terms of not included in brios. So if that's the reason, Ema Sefer, it says over there, the Yacholahi, what does it say? Ema Sefer, the Yacholi, she can have a no, I mean, like a chicken paya, right? That's not having out from brios. That's hefker for everybody. It's only like a chicken paya, but she can't have from the husband. So here's the question that he raised over here. Is the husband included when she says, I'm not going to have enough from all people? Is the husband included or not? In the beginning, it says, why can't he break it? Can't break it because she could get it off from him. She says, I'm not going to have him off from all people. He can't break. It says the Mishnah says he can't break that netter. Why can't he break the netter? Again, according to Rav Yossi, Ina Nefesh, it's not, and it's not Beino Lebeino because he's not included in netter because he's not part of Brias. He's not part of other humans. He's not part of the human race, right? As far as this net is concerned, when she says all humans, he's not included. Okay, so why did you have to say she can have enough from Leket Shekompeya? Leket Shekompeya is mashma that she can't have enough from him, right? Only Leket Shekompeya. Alma Baal Lo Ochla, Alma Baal Boy B'Chlal, Alma Baal B'Chlal Briyasu. So here's the general question: is the husband included in the net or not? Amar Ula La'olam Baal Lav B'Chlal Brias. He's really not included in the Brias, like we said originally. So why do you have to come on to Leket Shekompeya? Just say she can get enough from her husband. You could say, let's say the husband's poor. He says, but even if he's poor and he can't sustain her, right? He can't supply her with food. So there's two things over here. He can't break the netter for two reasons. Number one, she could have enough from him, right? Because he's not included in Brias. When she's forbade all Brias, why does Rav Yossi say, again, a ton of our missions are Rav Yossi, why does Rav Yossi say that it's not Beino Lebeino even? Because she could have enough from him. He's not included. And secondly, even if he's poor, she could have an off from Leket Shekapeh. There's a second reason. Rabba says no, the other way around. Amar lo olam ba'al b'chal brios. He is included. Umatam komar. When the Mishnah says ein yachal hafer v'yachol lahi lahanas Leket Shekapeh, the Leket Shekapeh is the reason why the husband can't break it. The truth is, the husband is included in the neder. He can't have an off. He can't. She can't have an off from him. She can't have an off from him. Wait a minute. If she can't have an off from anybody in the world, and she can't have an off from him, so the chorah that would be in a nefesh, maybe even according to Rav Yossi, or at least beina lebeina. So why can't he break it? That's the reason, because she can still have Leket Shekapeh, even if she forbids all the food in the world, all the people. She can't have enough from anybody in the world, right? But she could still have Leket Shekapeh, and therefore he can't break the neder. So according to Rabbah, the husband is included in brios. He is included in brios. He also included in it, but he still can't break it because she doesn't have Leket Shekapeh. Rav Nachman goes like the first shita, like Ula. La'olam ba'ala b'chal brios. Really, the husband is not included in brios, and therefore she could have enough from him. So why do you have to talk? So why do you have to come on to Leket Shekapeh? Yeah, the first answer was, okay, that's another reason. Nisgarsha. Oh, he's saying the Baal is not included in brios, right? Not included in brios. At this point in time, how did they answer? Well, at this point in time, this is what happened, right? At this point in time, he's not included in the brios. But let's say he divorces her, and she had forbade all brios. Maybe I know. In this garsha, even if he divorces her, then pay. In other words, the husband cannot break the neder now. Why? Because even though she forbade enough from everybody else, she could have enough from him. And even if he divorces her later on, and then you could say that retroactively he became part of the neder too, because now he's part of brios. He's not her husband anymore. Still, she could have enough from Leket Shekapeh. The Ran goes on to bring up a whole shita, a whole discussion about a Gemara that's brought down in Yerushalmi about, and we refer to it here also. I think it's in Nazir also. About, let's say she makes a neder, she's not going to have a nor. We had it before the Gemara also from Yordei Hayam. He says after 30 days, I don't want to have any nor from the seafarers. Okay, and then you have a guy. There's a person with the time of the neder. He was a seafarer, but now when 30 days, when the neder's chal, he became a landlubber. He didn't want to go to sea anymore, right? He gave up. He retired from being a sailor. So, do you go according to the time that you made the neder? At the time you made the neder, he was a sailor. So then the neder is chal on him too, even it's chal after 30 days when he's no longer a sailor. Or do you look at it that time? So there's a machlokas over there. How do you go? And we l'chara go according to the time of the neder. Now here at the time of the neder, the husband, right, was not included in brios because he was a husband. Now Rav Nachman says, he's not part of the neder. But the problem is he may become part of the neder if he divorces her. And if he divorces her then he's part of the neder. Still, he can't break the neder now. Why? Because she can eat like a shikvam. So from our Gemara, it's mashma that you go according to what? Even according to later on. Even though the Rav Nachman says he's not b'chal brios, but he could become part of the brios later on. So the Ran comes out that it's possible to say, which we'll see, you look at the kavanah, and she meant to include anybody who is brios, whether it's now or later. You can look at it depending on her intention. In other words, she doesn't want to have enough from people who are not her husband. She doesn't want people. So if this guy becomes not her husband, she meant to include him too. You look at the kavanah, and you could include it in both cases. There, the Gemara brings down to machlokas. Machlokas between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Kiva. Do you look at the time of the neder, or when the neder was made, what the status was, or you look at the time when the neder's chal later on, like after 30 days when she wants to neder b'chal? Here we're looking at it. Here, when she made the neder, the husband was not included, right? Because not included in brios. But later on, when he divorced her 10 years later, or whatever it was, then the husband would be included in brios. So how do you determine that? So from Rav Nachman, you see, even though the husband's not included in brios now, but he will be included later on. So you have to say either you go like Rabbi Shmuel says, you look at the time that the neder is chal, or you say that in this case it's different. Or we don't go like the Gemara. We say that whatever she meant to include anybody who's not her husband, whatever time that may be. That's what you have to explain this Gemara. All right, pick it from here tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem. Have a good day.